Jennifer Mayfield is Deputy Senior Editor of Electronic Publishing at the Optical Society. She's been working in publishing for over 18 years, and most notably as Managing Editor of Optics Express. And she has lots of other background, but I'm just going to turn it over to Jenny so she can get to her content. Thank you, Jenny.
Hi, I'm Jenny Mayfield. I work at the Optical Society of America. We were founded in 1916, so we're celebrating our centennial this year. And OSA is the scientific home for optics and photonics professionals. We host meetings and publish content on anything that has to do with the science of light. That includes lasers, fiber optics, biomedical imaging, anything from rainbows to cloaking. So we're not just about eyeglasses. We host our own journals on our own platform called OSA Publishing. Our digital library offers the largest collection on optics and photonics content. We have 9 OSA journals plus a membership magazine, and we also have partnerships with other societies like IEEE to host 8 other journals. And we also provide access to over 600 conference proceedings. And just to give you an idea of the amount of content we have, Optics Express is our largest journal, and it's also the 12th largest journal in the world. So that's the amount of content that we have to check for funding data. It can be pretty intimidating. So this is kind of how I feel when I think about funding data. It's overwhelming. Why are we doing this to ourselves as publishers? We have to now start tagging funding agencies, award IDs. We have to rely on the authors to give us this information accurately. It just really hasn't been an easy thing for us to implement. But really it comes down to all the open access mandates that we need to comply with. So our role as a not-for-profit publisher, it's really to be a resource for our authors to help them comply with the funding mandates. You know, we all know that it's really the author's responsibility to make this content publicly available, but in reality, it really comes down to the publishers to be an asset to the authors. We want to help our authors be successful. And also, as more government agencies are joining the ranks, of course, it's becoming more important for us to know who's funding our papers and where this funding is coming from. So, and it's also really important that we have reports to understand the funding information. Liz Rogan, our executive director, was on Capitol Hill for the FASTER bill. The FASTER bill is legislation that will require earlier public access to government-funded research. Someone who is representing a government agency said that we only had a few articles submitted that had funding from this specific government agency. But at that time, we had only just started submitting our funding data to the Open Funder Registry. So yeah, it looked like we didn't have that much content funded by that agency, but we didn't have the data, and I think most publishers are probably in the same boat, where we didn't have a way of tracking that information with confidence or with accuracy. So ever since we started our Open Funder Registry workflow, we've improved our procedures for capturing funding data. We can better track key data points like who's funding, which journals, from what countries, and can even take that even further to track what topics are being funded. So we made some major workflows and technology changes to improve how we capture funding. The finer details really vary from journal to journal because each journal has its own workflow. But I just want to give you an overview of what we're doing. So we had to pull together all of our resources to get the workflow in place. But the first step really begins with author compliance. And we're really heavily reliant on the authors to give us this information, and preferably before we publish their paper. So speaking of author compliance, they do provide us with funding data. They have for years. For decades, actually. So here are a few examples of some funding agencies that we've pulled from our documents. Does anybody want to take a guess of what they have in common? Besides the typeface. Yeah, exactly. They all fall under the umbrella of the U.S. Department of Energy, which is a course participant. So this is what authors supply us. So it's our job to normalize all this funding information, all these agencies and sub-agencies of the DOE, identify them with the Open Funder Registry, submit the information to Crossref, and then make the article open access after the embargo period. So we have our own manuscript submission system called PRISM. We've built it and have been cultivating it for the past 18 years. We started online publishing before there was anything anybody could use for electronic peer review or electronic tracking of the document submission system. So we provide a type ahead that is connected to the Open Funder Registry for the author to type in. We also provide a free-form field in case they can't find it in the registry. I mean, it works okay, but it's not perfect. If the author types in "the" before National Science Foundation of China, it will not find the funding agency in the registry, which is a big problem. But Crossref, does provide a very nice widget that will also match against the alternative labels in the registry, which is extremely helpful, especially if there are other languages like the Canadian government. So this is what we see after the author submits, and this is just a screenshot of the acknowledgments. So it's really, the burden is on the staff to make sure that it matches and that it's accurate. So the first agency, National Basic Research Program of China, it's a program, it's not a funding agency, it's not in the Open Funder Registry, so there's no DOI. So this is actually correct. NSFC, it has a matching DOI, so the author did that correctly. And here the Chinese Academy of Sciences, it looks like the author just copied and pasted from the acknowledgments. So it obviously didn't find a DOI, but it's pretty clear that the Chinese Academy of Science would be in the Open Funder Registry. So we export the funding data from our PRISM system to import it into the full text XML. So this is what it looks like once it's in our XML. It's validated against the DTD, which is great. We don't want to publish any XML that's not valid against our DTD. But is that really enough? What about this problem with with the Chinese Academy of Sciences? How are we going to deal with that? We don't want to spend time proofreading the XML. That would be torture to have to do. So what we use is Schematron. If you're not familiar with Schematron, it's a set of rules and checks to ensure the quality of the data within the elements of the XML. It goes above validating the XML against the DTD. It will not fix the XML for you, but it will help you proofread your XML against your business rules automatically. So using Schematron against this problem that we have with the Chinese Academy of Sciences, it will bring up an error for us. It will provide an explanation of what's wrong. It will even provide us with the missing DOI. So now at this point, it's up to the staff to decide what they want to do next, if they want to take the time to correct the XML or not. But that is a manual process where they would have to go in and manually fix the XML tags. So I just want to briefly go over some of the basic Schematron rules that we're checking. Sasha Swartzman, who is our content architect, this has been a labor of love for him. He's spent countless hours, months, developing our Schematron rules. I have the easy job of just talking about it. But I just want to kind of go through some of the rules that we're using. And also, when I refer to labels here, I'm referring to the labels derived from the Open Funder Registry, because each funder has a preferred label, and they also have alternative labels for name variants and also for the acronym. So the first two rules are fairly straightforward, just matching the label against the DOI for consistency, and then matching the DOI against the label. We're matching the consistency between the funding section and the back section against the funding data that the author submitted. And here we can see this last rule, the author submitted the Department of Energy as a funder, but they failed to upload it in our PRISM submission system. So this Schematron alert will notify us if an agency like the Department of Energy is missing. So for lessons learned, we really had to be really flexible with how we built our Schematron. We've had so many different workflows with our different journals. Some journals we send to a vendor for copy editing and composition where they do the Schematron check for us. Most of our content we do in-house. Some journals have a separate funding section, some don't, but we have found that having a funding section that's separated from the acknowledgments has been really helpful for us for the Schematron rules. So now we're changing all of our journals to make sure that they have a separate funding block. Now this was a problem that I came across with the paper because our Schematron kept bringing up an error because it was looking for the German version, but the author uploaded the English version of the Swiss National Science Foundation. So it's really important that you provide authors the ability to upload alternative labels into the submission system so it can find a matching DOI in the registry. And that's with the Crossref widget. We'll do that for you. Another problem that we had were false positives with checking against acronyms. Acronyms are not unique in the registry, and they're just very prolific. Here we have DMR in the acknowledgments section, but DMR is known as the Division of Materials Research, which is a sub-agency of NSF. But here it's clear that it's just a part of the award ID and not actually a funder. So we've had to make changes to our Schematron to just ignore acronyms. And also we do get help from Crossref. As Chuck mentioned, if you do submit a funding agency without a DOI, they will run a match for you and return back the DOI for you. We do have a script that will pick up that DOI and insert it back to our XML to go along with the funding information for that article. And it also found this problem where we had an author typed in an article before NSFC, so it didn't find a DOI. And for some reason, staff missed the Schematron rule for this. So we have this help from Crossref sort of as a safety net. But it does help if you do have pretty clean funding information to start with. So for lessons learned, we really started small. We really started only with one funding agency to begin with, the Department of Energy. And once we found out a workflow of how that would work for us, we were able to build it up to 80 funding agencies that we wanted to track, and now we're up to over 200. We're continually making enhancements to our Schematron. For as many journals as we publish, we have that many different workflows, so we've really had to be flexible with how we track and check the funding information for each journal. For our journals where we have a vendor composing the articles for us, we give them our Schematron too, so they're able to validate the XML before sending it back to us to publish. And so by having a solid way to validate our funding information, we're able to build this technology to also help us track licensing too for funding agencies who require the CCBY license. So we're able to build upon that. So We've really learned a lot from this process. The staff have really gotten used to it. We're really about maybe about 98 to 100% error-free for most of our journals. So that's it. Thank you.